Hello. I am sharing with you guys today a few of the thoughts that have kind of popped into my head in the last few days. And oh, by the way, happy Easter. I hope everybody had a nice day. It's gorgeous out here. So, in the past few days, a few of the things that have popped into my head have been, you know, well, in the past month, I've actually started a couple of new jobs. Two, I am a certified master gardener, and so I got hired on at a private estate to take care of their garden. And it's not just a glorified landscaper. I actually am able to diagnose problems in the garden as to why a plant may or may not be doing well. I also will be able to design a garden so not only does it look beautiful, but it'll function beautifully as well. Because I've learned in my life one of the best pieces of advice I've ever gotten from somebody was work smart, not hard. And I don't know, that always resonated with me. And of course, I am an extremely hard worker. I will literally bust my ass to get a job done. That's awesome. You know what I mean? But we don't always have to work so hard that it debilitates us or obliterates us or diminishes us. Sometimes when you work smart and not hard, that just means finding out like the most efficient way to go about that, because what happens then is when you do find that efficiency, it's not that you are scaling back on the effort or on the outcome. It just means that in essence, you're actually able to do more and complete something, in a way that when you work smart, not hard, it actually allows you more time to pay attention to the detail and things like that. So, anyways, I'm kind of off track there. The few things that that have been coming up for me lately is with starting these new jobs. As we all know, is when you start a new job. I don't know about you guys, but I definitely get nervous. I definitely have more than a touch of social anxiety. And awkwardness, I feel like. And what I've realized is that, well, first of all, a lot of that comes from, and I hate to use the word trauma, but it really is related to spending a number of years with an ex-husband who was not nice, not a nice person, and he did do his best to kind of obliterate my spirit and obliterate my self-worth. And what it does is it gets inside your head and it stays with you. And even to your best intentions, you say to yourself, well, I'm going to let it go, or I'm not going to let that bother me, or I am worthy, and I am. But I feel like we've all had everybody's been through their own version of what that could have been. And it could have been something that, stayed with you from childhood, maybe in school, being teased and stuff like that. And I definitely went through that. I grew up in a place where the girls, especially, but guys too, just weren't very, they weren't very nice. And it took me a really, really, really long time to, instead of looking back and, I kind of would say, well, it was the area I grew up in, or it was like the type of people. And the truth of the matter is it really probably wasn't. Children learn from their parents, and I think, and the adults in their life, not just their parents, but I feel like we don't realize that, like, it's not about really what we say, it's about what we do. Children emulate what they see, what they witness. And if you live in an environment where the environment isn't so nice, well, then, you're most likely going to project that out into the world and to others around you. And most people don't even realize that they're doing it. And especially children, if that's all they see, then that's their norm. That's their state of normalcy. And I think what we forget is those children become adults, and even though you might learn intellectually that certain things aren't the norm, and the norm doesn't necessarily have to be negative, it could be a very positive thing, but when you grow up and you intellectually know that certain things aren't the norm, it's fine that you know it intellectually, but still those patterns and those habits and things are ingrained like into our psyche and our behavior, and just it's ingrained into our fiber in ways that we might not necessarily realize. So over the past few days, or past month, as in starting new jobs, and I have picked up a new bartending position at a new bar, and so I have another set of new people that I'm meeting, and again, learning where everything is. The place is unfamiliar and whatever. But one thing that I have noticed is that in the past, and because of the baggage that I carry, and I try to be conscious and to not let it affect me in terms of controlling what I do or the way I act. One thing that I've realized that in the past is because I was like nervous or like socially awkward, I might work somewhere and then I would, like right after my shift, I would like just go home right away. Like, okay, I'm here to work, and then I go home, and or like I wouldn't, converse with some of my employees. I would friendly banter and things like that, but I always felt, excuse me, a certain level of detachment, for sure. And I never really like knew why. But then, like like I said, the past few days, things like this have kind of like been popping into my head, and I kind of do know where that comes from now. Like I put some thought into it, and really, not that I'm trying to analyze myself, but like I try to be self-aware, and I have little epiphanies here and there, and you got to listen to those, because again, we talked about that when the universe is speaking to you, we have so much noise in our lives that I feel like we diminish it, and we're taught like, well, that's crazy and like whatever. But again, it goes along with listening to your gut, and it goes along with trusting your instinct, and trusting yourselves. And the more you trust yourself, the happier you are. I believe the happier I am, the more content I feel, the more at peace and relaxed I feel. We've all had that feeling where we have done something, completely on a gut feeling, and then you turn around and you go, wow, well, I'm glad I did that, or I'm glad I didn't do that, or I'm glad I didn't go there. Or maybe it was just serendipitous in the fact where maybe by circumstances you were prevented from going somewhere or arriving at a certain time, and then later you hear, oh, geez, there was an accident, or oh, there was this, or maybe you showed up early and you won something. But for whatever it is, those are the little things that shows that the universe is guiding you on a primal level. And so anyways, I'm notorious for tangents. So going back to what I was speaking of in regards to having that nervousness, that social anxiety. One thing that did strike me was that even though I was feeling nervous on the inside, and the nervousness was about whatever, whether it came from the trauma I experienced with the ex-husband, or it comes from that little, it's like that little worm of doubt. We all have it, and it's like your insecurity, and for whatever reason. I mean, I've always liked myself. I've always been happy with myself, but we all have that little tiny thing of self-doubt, and everybody has it, and it's good to have it sometimes, and then other times it isn't. And one thing I've realized is that even though it was my issue and I was the one who was nervous, and I never treated anybody badly or differently because of it, but in a new work situation, because I was like nervous, or anxious within myself, and that had everything to do with me and how I felt inside. I realized that it actually can be perceived by others as you not liking them. Now that's profound to me. Think about that for a second. You're nervous, you feel a certain way inside, and even though you might not actively project it onto others, you may make others, or not make them feel, because they're going to feel the way they're going to feel, but you might actually initiate that feeling of self-doubt within somebody else, and then it is a chain reaction. And how scary is that? And over the years I wonder sometimes, like, why then after a while, maybe people didn't seem as warm with me, or as, friendly towards me. Well, it's because inadvertently, by being doubtful of myself, I had then triggered others to doubt themselves. And then people project in all kinds of ways. If you, and there's a saying, people might not remember like what you said to them, or, what you did, but they always remember how you made them feel. And so without meaning to, I may have made people feel insecure, or, why doesn't she like me, or what am I? And so I just found that interesting, like, and it really did. It popped into my head as like an epiphany the other day, and I just thought to myself, like, wow. To me, that was very, very profound. So let me share with you this. So last year, and I don't even know how I stumbled onto this, but I, because again, I did share with you that in my life, people have said, oh, like you should teach, or you should, write a book, or share your experiences, and yada, yada, yada. And I always thought, like, what about me would be so interesting? And it's not really me that's interesting. It's, I do love to share my knowledge. I have taught classes on henna. I did teach a gardening class. It was one of the requirements to receive my master gardening certification. And we actually built a garden. And I can't tell you how many times and how many classes that, I really did. I wanted to have like a syllabus and like, like certain things, but it always ends up the same. I walk in and I just kind of wing it, and it always turns out great. And so that's kind of why I started doing these videos, because what the hell, I'm just gonna wing it, and it'll come. If you build it, it will come. And so last year, I don't know how I came across it, but I did see something where it was the United, a non-denominational organization, and I don't practice. I am spiritual, but I'm not religious. We'll just put it that way. And I remember that when I married my ex-husband, because Hindu and Muslim, and I did grow up with Christian values, but I feel every religion has the same values, anyways. Which is, love others, do unto others, be a good person, and you always try to be the best version you can of yourself and the most authentic version that you can. And I've known from a very young, very, very young age that church wasn't, that being spiritual wasn't about being in a building. You know, it wasn't about being in a building reading, one set of certain stories or parables or whatever it is. It really is a feeling that comes from inside, and you be a good person not because there's a punishment or a reward at the end. You just do it because that's just what is. And my parents did raise us that way, that you just be good because that's it. Because we are good. And there's no punishment, no reward. You're just good because you're good, and it's good to be good, and it feels good to be good, and I mean, of course we're all a little bad, but I mean, I'm talking about the big things. You treat others nicely, you do the right thing, even though it's hard sometimes the hardest thing. But along with that, nobody teaches you really like about like self-love, and things like that. And so I always had this like sense that, it was just like, if I had a church, it was nature. It was everything. I really do. I feel like a child sometimes, where I find the simplest things just so beautiful. And so, they simple little things touch me. Yesterday at my new job, which is not on the garden, it is at the bar, a couple of my coworkers found a finch who had flown into the window, and he didn't make it, and he was dead. And so, they had made the comment, like, and as I talk about finches, one just flies up in the tree over there. But, and they were joking, of course, and it didn't come from anywhere other than a joke. But they're like, yeah, just fling it over the edge, bury it at sea, and blah, 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 because we're near the water. And, I mean, of course I was laughing, and, like, we were making jokes, and it was funny, and the poor guy flew into the window, and, he didn't survive. And so, we have flower planters there, and I did make the choice to, I put on my gloves and whatnot, and I carried the poor little guy, and I buried him in one of the flower pots. And, they were kind of teasing me, but I do have a soft heart like that. And, even though he wasn't my pet or my bird or whatever, we all deserve that consideration of, every living thing deserves that consideration of reverence and respect. And so last year I stumbled across this non-denominational organization, and I was able to get ordained as a world minister. And all that means is that I'm not registered in New York yet. I haven't done it because I get lazy and procrastinate and things like that. And this is one of the things I do have to do. But this just means that I can perform weddings here. I can marry people and, all that kind of stuff. But because I do like to blather on, I went ahead and I did it. I just took the plunge and whatever, got the certificate. And, I just felt like it was just, for some reason, it was just something I thought was neat, and it was something I should do. And the way I originally found out about that is it was a friend of a friend, and that's how I found out that type of thing even existed, because I had him marry my ex-husband and I because of the religious, because of we didn't want it to be a religious ceremony based in any one denomination or faith. And because my religion, if I had to pick one, would be nature, I was married outside, and, yada, yada, yada. So that's that. That's where I found that. And so after doing that, I began to think, like, well, now that I've done this and I'm an ordained minister, and I could, like, what would I say at somebody's wedding, and where would I speak on, like, how do you do this? How do I go about And what I realized is that it's not about the science or the actual steps of it. It's just sometimes that like things really just come to you the way they're supposed to come to you. And I think that the important thing is like just speaking from the heart. In my life, especially like school age, I, again, I had moved into the neighborhood, in kindergarten. And I mean, I remember like kids still treated me like the new person. Jeez. I mean, they were relentless with me when I first moved in, but they stayed relentless like that with me up until I graduated high school. I literally could not wait to get the hell out of high school because it was just, I was relentlessly made fun of. And even though I was still always very happy-go-lucky. And and the biggest thing is anytime there was a new person or like somebody else who was made fun of, that really, I don't know, I was very fiercely protective for them. And it always resonated with me because I just always thought, well, it made me feel this way, and that's terrible. And so it was out of my own experiences that I was able to help others. And so I feel that it's just, and again, it's common. I'd like to say it's common sense. You just treat others nicely and build others up, because again, with that chain reaction, you'd never know how you will affect somebody. I remember running my gas stations and people would have a bad day at work and just come in and unload on me. And it was like a 2-second transaction. They're just giving me money for gas and out the door. And I mean, I can't tell you how many times people used it. And again, it goes with that, will you have a kind face thing where, maybe that's why. And again, maybe it was just an easy way to unload some of their negative energy that they had been carrying around that day, but what they don't realize is that does take a toll on that person. And just because somebody's a stranger doesn't mean that that's okay. I've realized that in my life, I would often say to myself, like, well, what did I do wrong? Or why doesn't so-and-so like me? Or why does so-and-so, why do I get treated like this? Or why are girls mean to me? Or why did that guy say that disgusting thing? Or why did he say that mean thing? Or whatever it is, like whatever. And what I have realized in the last couple of years is that people don't treat you, the way people treat you, like 90% of it has like absolutely nothing to do with you. Not at all. Not even a little. And people can do the like, it feels like the worst thing in the world, and you're like, how are you, like, why are you so angry? Or why did you why didn't you call me back? Or like whatever it is. And I think people just don't realize that when you're treated a certain way, this way or that way, that really literally the issue really does lie within the heart of that other person, or in the mind, or both of that other person. I mean, I recently was dating a man on and off, and he's a beautiful person. He's funny. He's a little crazy. He's crazy in a good way, and like that's, I think, what like kind of drew us together. He can be extremely sweet and loving. And then there's this like other side of him and he's not cruel, but he does like really outlandish, crazy stuff. He would just disappear for a few days and like not talk to me. And I'm like, what am I doing wrong? It wasn't even about me. And like, we had conversations, and he had a hard childhood. And, and unfortunately that hard childhood was really inside the home. It wasn't, and I mean, it probably was, because of the way it was in his home, it then translated to the way it was in school. And, to carry that around, not only even if in the best case scenario, school was amazing, if you have that hard time at home as a child, I can't imagine the amount of insecurity that would bring up and that you would carry around with you. And so as a little guy, you know, I, I look at this and and like it, my heart really, like I can't imagine how tough it was for him, and we've talked and I've heard things that would just blow your mind, and that explains so much about the way he projected onto me or treated me or didn't treat me or whatever it was. But I feel that he really, his fiber is really a good person, and he does, and he had said it. He goes, I just wanted to be the opposite of what I grew up with, and I get that. And like in our conversations, we would share experiences, and I remember him saying to me, well, you don't even know what it's like. You have no idea. You have the perfect family. And that's the thing. I said, I am lucky. I really am. I had a beautiful family. And that's not to say that we didn't have our own things, growing up, and we all have that in our families. Everybody's family is slightly dysfunctional in their own way, and I am very lucky where I grew up with two parents who love each other very much. They treated us, beautifully. We had so much love in my family. And I said to him once, and I said, I just happened to get lucky like that. And I said, the crappy part is that I had strangers kind of like unload on me and, treat me in certain types of ways. And so, I had my own version of, trauma and baggage, even though it wasn't inflicted onto me by my parents. I went through what I went through, in that respect by strangers, and that's crazy. And I said, so I don't know if anybody has it worse or whatever. And yes, there is worse, of course there is, but the way it affected me, it affected me. It affected me the way it affected me, and it does that. It forms the way you think about things and the way you go about things. And my point is that we all have that. Every single one of us has it. And just because somebody hears about it and says, well, listen, mine's worse. Well, right, but everybody also has their own perception and their own shade of what was worse, and so my point in this is that when we deal with others, I think that as humans we forget, and because we're conscious beings, and we are conscious of, like, we're conscious in the way where we know what's going on, we know what's happening, but we don't necessarily look into the things of why we do things or why we say things. And we definitely don't, as humans collectively, look at our actions from like an outside view and say, wow, the way I acted because of my own insecurity, that created insecurity in somebody else or triggered insecurity in somebody else. I mean, I remember a few years ago, there was this man I had such a crush. I mean, and I feel like he most definitely, now that I look back, I can see that he had a crush on me as well. And we grew to care about each other, in just a very platonic type of way or whatever. But now that I look back, a lot of the things he did it was a very like soft and very gentle approach to me, and I couldn't see it. I couldn't recognize it because of the place I was in my thinking and in my mind at the time. And I was so insecure at the time that I thought like there would be no man on the planet who would ever want me. And because I had that thinking at the time, I completely missed all the good stuff. And it was stuff that I didn't even like realize until like, 5, 6 years later. And I was like, oh my goodness. And I just can't imagine how my insecurity, yes, it was affecting me, but I guarantee that I made this poor man feel equally as insecure, and if not more. And so I have a little list here that I'm looking at. And so anyways, I think I covered everything that I wanted to talk about. This video ran a little longer than I had hoped, and geez, time flies when I'm blathering on. But I just wanted to say that for anybody who watches this, thank you for taking the time out to do so. And again, like I said, I'm flying blind here 90% of the time, but I feel like I just want to share my thoughts and ideas with you guys, because you never know. Maybe it'll unlock a little door of perception for somebody. Maybe it'll offer insight to somebody else. Maybe it's just what you needed to hear at the time. Maybe I just needed to say it to get it out. So, anyways, I just wanted to say thanks so much. And you know what? Each day is new, and you can always be a better version of yourself than you were the day before. And I don't know. That's my goal. So that's it for now. Bye, guys. Thanks so much.